know is, okay. Well, the recording has started. So the SPEED program, I was talking about SPEED program, it's a 2-year graduate program for people coming straight out of their master's or PhDs even. And it's a very tailored program that is focused on your development. And so fundamentally, the program consists of many different assignments that you take on depending on which discipline that you're in. So if you're more oriented towards reservoir engineering or drilling engineering, that you perhaps would have 3 assignments across the 2 years, 8 months each. If you're more in the G&G background, geoscience, geology, geophysics, then you would have 4 assignments, 6 months each. This is obviously tentative as a rule of thumb. It obviously can vary. As a data science speed for myself, I am the first ever data science speed that they've hired within the company, which is obviously a huge honor for me, but at the same time, it comes with the challenges of expectations associated with it. But I am also undertaking 4 different assignments across the 2 years, 6 months each. How can we apply for it? You can apply on the website. So the different positions that are open every year are advertised on the website. And I think the company also does a very good job at marketing at the target universities specifically. So RWTH Aachen is a target university for Wintershall, and they come in to advertise the SPEED program, all the positions that are open every year, I think around December, or maybe even sooner, I think November or something. You guys might know better. They come to RWTH Aachen every year to advertise the SPEED positions. And you can definitely build rapport with the HR personnel there at such an introduction event, but that is not necessarily, it's not necessary for you to do that, for you to be able to apply or to be considered for a position. If you're competent, then you can certainly apply online. The applications typically open in December, if I remember correctly. So for example, for positions starting in January 2023, so usually the positions always start in January. For a position starting in January 2023, applications would open in December 2021. So quite a fair bit early on. And so you can definitely be the early horse and then apply early and then perhaps hit your application on their desk early on. It never hurts. Based on your experience, how did they select the applicants? So this is a very important question, and it's a very good question. So I'm happy somebody asked this, Muhammad. Thank you for the question. Because a lot of people, as students and myself as well, when I was a student, you do not fully understand how the corporate environment works, what their requirement is, what they're looking for, as opposed to what you're offering, right? The company, and I can only speak for Wintershall specifically, is not looking for someone in any discipline who's a perfectly chiseled, perfectly crafted professional in terms of technical capability. That is not what they're looking for, right? However, what they are looking for is someone who's extremely flexible in terms of learning, in terms of logistics, in terms of geographical relocability, and someone who effectively does display skills interpersonally to become a future leader, right? So the company definitely does hire speed trainees, and then they get trained definitely in their technical discipline, but also in terms of their management skills, in terms of their leadership skills, to then become future leaders of the company. And it's not just fluff talk. It's actually very important to understand, because the SPEED program, as I mentioned, has different assignments. People get sent to different assignments, different business units across the world. And then in those 6 months and also the post-SPEED period, you actually get a good taste of how the operations within these different business units work. And once you have hands-on experience with these different business units, then you're actually in a much better position to make management level decisions, because you have information on the ground level. And then you definitely also have connections to people within the business units. And so my advice to applicants who are looking to apply to SPEED is, if you're technically sound, that's perfect, right? There's never going to be any backlash you would face for being technically very competent. That is obviously a plus. However, if you don't necessarily consider yourself to be the most technically competent person based on a very generic GPA measure, I don't personally believe the GPA to be a perfect measure of your capability, but that's an argument in its own self. But if you're not, by this measure, the perfect candidate, you definitely potentially have skills, interpersonal skills, presentation skills that are and potentially could be of a lot of value to the company. So never shy away, just give it a go. right? And if you want an honest answer as to how you can maximize your chances into getting into the company, not just this company, but any company, an internship is the way to go, because you, first of all, would know what the company corporate environment looks like, how people are. And by the way, it can perfectly happen that you work at a company, you realize this place is not necessarily for you, the way the corporate environment is set up, how people's expectations are, whether it's too much expectation or sometimes too little expectation, you don't have enough work to do. These kind of things can happen. And so it's always a good kind of thing to dabble in and understand what kind of place is the right place for you to work. But if you can do an internship at this company specifically, the company places a lot of trust in their recruitment process through the internship channel, right? So if you have been a good intern, you have put into work and you have gained some recognition for it, then they have this internal feedback system where if you are now applying for the speed program, they definitely do ask your supervisor during your internship to give them some sort of a feedback as to what kind of applicant you were. And because it's more reliable information as opposed to you making claims on your CV or cover letter, you definitely get an edge, right? If that's your long-term approach for students who are in your first year master's, for example, I'm not sure what level of education people have on this call right now, but if you're in your first year master's or bachelor's or whatever, and if this is a company that you potentially could see yourself working for, definitely give an internship a try.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mahad. And I think, Mr. Mahad, you have a background very specialized in geophysics, and then now you are working as a data analyst. So how did you found the link between those, and how did you found your passion in that?
So I am actually working as a data scientist and not as a data analyst, and there is a fundamental difference between the two. That's no problem. That's not a problem. So in the data domain, I mean, I identify three main disciplines: this data analysts, data engineers, data scientists. These three work hand in hand because we all need one another effectively, right? But I'm working as a data scientist, and as a data scientist, and I wish I had my presentations because I had a very nice slide set up to answer these exact questions. A data science role, many people can have, and they do have a misunderstanding of what data science is. And you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think before entering data science, many people think that it's primarily programming, a lot of artificial intelligence, machine learning, et cetera, but very computer science oriented, which is not necessarily wrong. However, that is not only what data science is, right? Data science is a very strong mathematical component, right? Probability and statistics becomes very integral, right? And for example, if we stick with probability and statistics, that's something that you learn within an engineering discipline anywhere, right? So if you're studying geophysics, that's something that you would definitely study. I mean, geophysics is primarily inverse theory, right? I mean, it's a problem solving regarding inverse theory problems. So that's something that I already knew I could map onto data science domains, right? But then there's obviously the component of programming, which is obviously a fair component. But then if you're in geophysics or in any other technical discipline, engineering related discipline, you're most likely still learning how to program, right? You're learning how to program domain specifically, but you're learning how to program nonetheless. I personally found that I could potentially work as a data scientist specifically for this company or this industry, not this company, but this industry. And I say that because much of data science, Mohammed, thank you for your question. I'll answer that in a bit. Data science, we as data scientists hardly ever work just with other data scientists. We work with domain experts because we're working towards a solution for a particular domain, right? And we definitely need domain knowledge for that. And if you're coming from a geoscience background, where you already have a good enough understanding of how the geoscience discipline works, then when you actually liaise with clients, as we call them, from other disciplines, geoscientists, reservoir engineers, drilling engineers, you don't necessarily have to start from scratch in terms of understanding their domain requirements, right? So for me, it was a very, I would say, fluid transition from geophysics into data science because I had the necessary fundamentals in terms of programming, in terms of mathematics and statistics, in terms of understanding of machine learning algorithms, AI in general. It was a very fluid transition because it was just me hopping onto the other board on the data-driven problem-solving side, and then now liaising with clients who are on the geoscience side of things, because that is the domain where I came from. I hope that answers your question.
Yes, definitely. Yes, thank you.
Yeah, I'll just quickly take Mohammed's question. Mohammed, that's a very fair question, because many people, when they're starting how to program, they want to learn the programming language that would yield the most benefit, right? And if that is, I don't necessarily even agree with that question, the way it's phrased usually. But if you want to stick to a programming language, then Python is the language these days that is the most popular. Right, simply because of its open source nature, simply because of how you can just develop artifacts and then you can launch it on, and then anybody could utilize whatever script that you've generated, whatever libraries you've generated. We within Wintershall Data generate our own libraries that we then use within other disciplines within Wintershall Data, or we open source package it to other people. So that's definitely a very important component of Python. R, to be honest, I don't have a lot of experience with R, because I had mostly experience with MATLAB and Python. But R is still a very good language. But the reason I said that this question is not necessarily a question that I like very much is because Python may be the most popular language today, but it may not be the most popular language tomorrow, right? This is a very ever evolving field. There might be a new programming language that might come through that would completely take over the market. And so the idea with programming languages is not so much that you know the syntax. The syntax is only 10% of the problem that you're trying to solve. It's really the critical thinking ability that you can have in terms of how to approach a problem, and then being able to devise programming workflows. And then the syntax you can just map on, that's no problem, right? The syntax is only 10% of the problems. And anybody who's worked in the discipline knows that. We spend 90% of our time abstracting the problem, devising workflows, and then breaking it down into what we call tasks within user stories. And then we script it up. Now, scripting part is
Yeah.
in my personal opinion, relatively the more easy part.
Yeah, because at the end, programming is just a stuff, right? I mean, it's just a tool. Like
Exactly.
it's
Exactly.
like you're a warrior. You have a sword, but if you can't like battling with someone, then it's just nothing, right?
Exactly. That's
Mm.
exactly right. Yeah.
And there's also a big question about what are the opportunities for students who have
Yes.
work experience actually from Moment, Mustafa? The opportunities for students who have works. I mean, I think it's related to the speed.
I mean,
program
for a
mostly.
speed program, yeah, I mean, for a speed program, it's not preferably to select students with work experience. I don't know.
So Moment, good question. Okay, how do I best answer this so that I'm fair, but I'm also honest? Typically, the company has an upper cap of 3 years of work experience that you can have maximally for you to still be eligible for a speed position. So that's the general rule of thumb. However, the company sometimes, and I mean sometimes only, sometimes does make exceptions for an applicant who obviously displays a whole lot of competence in their discipline, and the company still has room for such an applicant. So such things are always changing, right? So if you are a person potentially who has more than 3 years of experience, please still give it a shot. That's what I would say to you, right? Because I know when I was applying for the position, there was a couple of people in my final round with me who had, well, one of them had 10 years of experience, and they were still being considered. I mean, if they were in the final round, then they definitely were. It was okay for the company to consider them, right? So there's no hard rule, but there is a general rule. That's the best way I can say it.
So there's like opportunities for internship or master thesis could be conducted with the Wintershall that
Yeah,
instead of speed program.
So as far as I know, and I see someone on call, I think Vincent is here. Vincent, hello. Speak up if you're there. I'm in touch
Hi.
with yeah, I'm in touch with many people already. Vincent is a good friend of mine, and people have been looking for internship opportunities at the company. The company sometimes advertises them on the website, right? So they say it's a specific internship for a specific field, or sometimes they say this is a general internship application. Anybody who wants to apply for an internship in any particular discipline, you can just apply as a general internship as well. However, if there is not such a thing available online, you can still reach out to representatives in the company, HR people or whatever, and ask them if there is a potential for a master's thesis or something. Because yeah, that's also a way that I know many people get positions. So the answer to that is you can see if there's an option open online, apply through it. That's the best way, because then you know there's actually some space available that the company is looking to fulfill. And if there's not, then still try your hand, because the company might see you as a good candidate, especially for the potential speed, like a feature in the speed program, and then they might create a position for you, which is quite often what the company has done. So in my experience, actually, I applied exactly like that. I reached out to a contact person that I knew within the company. They forwarded my application to HR. They realized that, okay, they actually have a space for someone to do an internship within the company. And then I got called in. I did my internship. Then during my internship, I looked for a master's thesis. Then I got a master's thesis slot. And then, yeah, the rest is history. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Yeah. Yes, Momin, go please, if you still have a question.
No, thanks. That's good. That's fair enough. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. There's also a question here. If it's possible for you, could you please talk about data-driven methods? Yeah. Okay. The question is very detailed.
Can you talk more about data for reservoir engineers, which data we need? Okay, just tackling the last part. I'm not a reservoir engineer, to be honest, so I'm not sure what data you would need. But I mean, the main crux of your question is, does the company provide real data sets for working during these 2 years? Absolutely. You're working as a proper employee, and you're working on real life problems. So you're working with real data and you're working towards real life solutions. So the SPEED program is a graduate program. It's a training program, absolutely, but you're still a full-time employee and you're working in a team and you're contributing towards a project. And is it possible for you to please talk about data-driven methods? Not sure what you exactly mean by that. Could you please elaborate? What would you like for me to talk about?
Please go, Mohammed, and if you have the question, may you please clarify it? You can just unmute the microphone and just explain your question. Maybe he has a problem with the internet or something.
Yeah, that's all right. Well, Mohammed, you can speak up whenever, or type your question, and then.
Or maybe I can chip in this question. I mean, like, we as a geoscientist should be like related to how we explore or do exploration, right? Exploration in oil and gas and stuff. I mean, like looking for a trap and looking for the petroleum system and stuff. Or how is it related to the data? I mean, like as a data scientist, as you said. How that's come up with that?
Yeah, that's a good question. And again, this is something that I had addressed in my presentation. If only I had it on me. And so
okay,
maybe I do want to leave some spice for next week, right?
Yeah, sure.
But maybe I could leave some breadcrumbs already. For me to rephrase, I think I should perhaps rephrase your question so that it's more in data science terms, and then maybe it would make more sense. We as data scientists, right? Our job is not necessarily to work with geoscientists as, did I say, we as data scientists, our job is not to work with geoscientists as just secondary data scientists, as secondary geoscientists who know how to program. That's not necessarily the job. What we're working on within the company are pockets that we identify within workflows, right? And then we see how we can utilize the tools that we have, whether it's simple programming tools, whether it's implementation of machine learning algorithms or whatever. How can we utilize the skill sets and the tool set that we have in this pocket so that we can optimize workflows, we can streamline workflows, we can make them faster, make them more cost effective, right? So one example that I will talk about next week is and this is something that I'm working on right now within my assignment right now, is we're developing a cognitive search engine, for example, within the company that is that integrates documents, data within our data hub, which is a centralized database. And then it's also integrates data that is publicly available via APIs, et cetera. So publicly available literature, for example, right? And then again, I'll just give you a brief summary. I'll talk about it in more detail next week. Such a search engine can really streamline and very much fasten up the process of information acquisition that exploration geoscientists, the process that exploration geoscientists have to go through at the very start when they're trying to look to enter into a new basin, into a new country, and they just have to get some information regarding whether such a basin has hydrocarbon potential or not. So usually geoscientists would just go through a ton of literature, reading through it, and there's a lot of friction losses that come with. But what can really help is such a smart search engine that can just spit out paragraphs with the relevant information that you have, especially with relational cases. So you say, I want information about a particular source rock and a particular reservoir, and I want a paragraph that states information of both of these in relation. And that's the kind of search engine that we're developing, right? So it gives you very relevant results, and it can speed up processes 10 times or more, right? So we as data scientists, we're developing tools that are disruptive in nature like that. So this is disruptive innovation in that regard. But we also work with incremental innovation. So we help people make one tedious, very redundant task automated very fast. So for example, some person gets some information in a table on a PDF, right? Typically what people would do is that they open that table and they'd start copying those values into Excel, right? It's fine if you do it once maybe, right? But if you have to do it repeatedly again and again, then it's a problem of scalability. So this is what I did 2 weeks ago. I finished this project is I developed a PDF extraction tool, which can go through your PDFs, and wherever it finds tables, it automatically extracts that information, dumps it into an Excel file. And if there's any formulas that are connected to it, it connects it back to them. Right. And that's an automated task. You can now scale it to many PDFs, right?
So it's not always about technical aspects. Yeah, I mean, like you can also talk about business aspects to yeah, I mean, like with these tools and
yeah.
Oh, you can
this is great.
proceed, yeah.
And I have another question. So I have a question regarding Wintershall strategy. If it's now there is more focus on the renewable energy more than the non-renewable energy. Do you think that there is like a transition or shifting towards the geothermal energy more than the oil and gas?
As far as I know, and I'm definitely not a part of the board, so I don't know what's on the cards, right? So I need to be very careful with what kind of information I publicly divulge as a representative of Wintershall. But what I do know is public information regarding the company is that we are right now, as of right now, are not engaging in any geothermal projects. That's not necessarily where our expertise lies. That's not necessarily where our political ties lie. That's not necessarily where we have licenses to operate, for example. So our expertise still remains within the hydrocarbon part of the energy provision industry, right? So that's gas primarily, but also oil. But our portfolio is primarily gas oriented. That being said, we're now making very, very quick strides towards incorporating hydrogen into our portfolio, and we're also very quickly dabbling into carbon capture and storage, right? CCS. So hydrogen and CCS are more of our renewables side of our portfolio. Geothermal is not a part, as far as I know right now.
Yeah, thank you. And I think we have, I think Mohammed just reformed the question again. So he said,
he said,
for example,
we receive data from the seismic or well logger section. The point is, how can we play with this information? Which type of data do they need, or which result will they need? We know data is the key for this work. Mohammed, if you're talking about what kind of data scientists need, or reservoir engineers need, I'm not really sure what you're asking, but I can tell you this much. Seismic data, right? There's entire research departments in big companies like Saudi Aramco, like their entire research departments dedicated to automating processing workflows for seismic data sets, right? So when I worked at CGG, like that was effectively my job. I am the manual labor that is processing the data manually in terms of implementation of algorithms. The algorithms themselves are automated, but which algorithms to implement, that's my job as a processing geophysicist, for example. There's entire research departments that are dedicated now to completely streamlining and automating this workflow. So take raw data set and transform it into a final 3D or 2D data set. And I guess you could call that, because it's primarily AI based, it's deep learning model based, machine learning model based, you can call that artificial intelligence. You can call that data science. And in some sense, although I wouldn't necessarily call it data science, I would then call it machine learning engineering properly. If your question, again, I'm just trying to infer points from your question, how can we play with this information? How can we play with data? If you're talking about log data, for example, I did this project just 3 weeks ago where log data in terms of LAS files can be imported in your development environments, for example, within Python, and then you can do very easy data manipulation within Python, right? So there is potential for data science even within these specific domains regarding log acquisition and things like that, because a lot of what people do within production engineering and drilling engineering is acquisition of data, of course, reading of data, but then also manipulation of data, because not all of the data that you get is actually good quality data. So you still need to tweak it around. And then there's dedicated software suites that are out there in the market. We as Wintershall Data have licenses to those software suites, but the problem is that their application is obviously hard bounded. You can only conduct the activities that the software suite allows. This is fundamentally a problem for us data scientists, because we want perfect flexibility. We're not perfect, but we want a fair bit of flexibility in terms of what we should be able to do with data. So as a data scientist, I don't promote everything to be I don't promote everything to be coded from scratch, because that's just a waste of time and resources. That's not what I promote. But what I do promote is the flexibility of work environments that you have, where you can definitely utilize software suites, but then they have programming environments integrated within them, so that any user who wants to tweak their data around using such a development environment can do so. And by the way, Schlumberger with their softwares that they're developing with Petroleum, et cetera, they're now increasingly incorporating development environments, primarily Python based, for users to be able to take a lot more control over the data. So I don't know if that answered the question, but the question, to be honest, was a little vague for me. So I just shared whatever I could share.
Looks like we have to also invite Professor Wellman here to answer Muhammad question.
Last question, can you write your email or your contact details if it is possible for you? Yes, I'd be happy to do that. I can do that right now. I was going to do that after next week's presentation as well. So whichever you would prefer. I would like for you guys to still show up next week. So I think
Yes.
Let's say this is a teaser for next week, yeah? For next
Yes.
Next week is the part 2. I mean, this one is the part 1. Next week is the part 2.
Yeah. Usually we have the presentation, then discussion. Now we started the discussion, then we don't have the presentation. It's okay.
By the way, I have a question, Mahad. If you are in the position of a final year student and you want to take thesis, so which one the path that will you choose? Either be a data science in petroleum industry, or not a data science, but related about renewable energy. I mean, that's such a different path that you can get. But there is no option data science in renewables. I just limit the options here.
Okay. So this is effectively a very professional would you rather game. No, that's fair. Good question. Definitely a very good question. Although the answer to that is fairly obvious, it just really depends on your personal interests. That's definitely very important. But then, of course, market scope is also very important. If the question, and if I infer another question from this question, if the question is, why did I choose to go into data science within the hydrocarbon industry, which, let's be fair, has a certain public perception, perhaps is not the industry to stick around for decades and decades and decades. It's going to stick around for a while, but perhaps not in 100 years, 150 years, maybe not. Then why did I choose this profession? For me, I first personally was quite keen on programming. I really liked programming. I like math. And I wanted to go into data science because it's a field that is, again, scalable and widely applicable. So in the future, say another economic downturn comes and all of a sudden, if I'm made redundant for that matter, it's useful to have skill sets that are widely applicable, and your CV does not necessarily confine you to apply only to another oil and gas company, right? So that's the one bit. That problem, obviously, that confining of options problem does not actually exist with the renewables industry, because that is the up and coming industry, right? For me, my recommendation for the future in general, especially considering how the tech industry is evolving, right, and how the tech space and the tech tools are evolving, is to go into whatever discipline that you want to go into. That's not a problem, but just always make sure that whichever discipline that you're going into, don't only learn technical niche domain specific skills. Always put specific focus on learning transferable skills, whether they're technical or soft skills, interpersonal skills, because that is exactly what's going to take you further down the road, right? Because many people as students, and myself definitely am guilty of that as well. When I was a student, I used to think whatever job I land, whatever position I land straight after my university is the be all end all, right? That's it. That's my life set, hard coded, done, right? That's not how it is, right? Things change a lot very quickly. And so what helps you over the longer run of things is having transferable skills, technical or interpersonal soft skills that you can implement in whatever discipline. And by the way, this is a very commonly understood concept within the industry, and I'm sure all of you will recognize this once you do start working. Some of you perhaps are already working, is that when you start working, 5 or 6 years of experience, after that, your technical skills or whatever become secondary, definitely, because you are now the technical expert, and it's more how you can oversee technical projects being done from a more managerial standpoint. That's what matters more, right? So make sure that whichever industry that you go into, whether it's renewables, whether it's hydrocarbon, whatever, have a focus on the transferability of skills, whether it's technical or it's interpersonal.
Thank you.
I hope that also answered your question, Fikri. It was a bit of a curveball, to be honest, but I think I covered some ends on that.
Thank
question.
you.
No problem.
And, yeah, thank you for you, Mr. Mahad, for answering our discussions and the questions, and thanks for everyone. And we just want the people, the present attendees, to be stay tuned and to have a question for the next time, for the next session. So I think, Ryan, is the end of our presentation. But before leaving, we have to take a group photo. So Ryan will manage this now.
Yeah, sure.
And don't forget our next week's session. Stay tuned.
Next week, or we will talk about it. We will inform you soon.
And prepare all your questions.
Yeah, prepare all the questions about data set and stuff. But most of all, thank you so much, Mahad, for your time. I mean, like, it's always happens, these kind of things. I mean, like, even in industry, right? So yeah, thank you so much for the fruitful discussion. So let's take a picture for next time. So I will just like list which one who will join for the next time. If you're not in this photo, then I can give you an access to do. But sure. Aksita, Tushar, hey Tushar, American boy, Moment, can you turn on the camera if you want? I will, okay. Nah, Dennis, you're so handsome then. Aska, you want? Okay. Everyone, just wait a sec. Let me try to adjust everything first. Okay. 1, 2, 3, say cheese, cheese. Wait a sec. Again. Okay, 1, 2, 3. This nice. Okay, thank you so much for all your attendance here. So, Rato, do you have, or Mahad, do you have something that you want to?
Yeah, just like to say thank you, everyone, those that asked questions. Thank you, first of all, for being patient. I joined late because I was struggling. So thank you for waiting. Thank you for understanding that the reasons for why I could not give a presentation today. And also thank you for the very good questions. I already get the sense that most of you, with the line of questioning, you're already on the right track in terms of how you're thinking about your future and what kind of pathways you wanna take on. And I'm very happy to give a more structured insight, say, about data science within Wintershall data and within the energy industry next week. And so for those of you that would be interested, and I'd hope that most of you or all of you are, I will see you guys next week.
Thank you very much, Mr. Fad, for answering all these questions and for explaining in details for part 1 and for extending our session to part 2. And yeah, really thank you for your timing and for the discussion. And yeah, we are so excited to join the next part of the session. And
Perfect.
now, yeah, thank you very much.
All right. Thank you very much, everyone. Have a good afternoon. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye, guys. Bye.
Bye.